Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Lots to get to this morning. We're going to start with fears of a broader war escalating out of Israel's war on Gaza. Also, some images emerging that people are comparing to Abu Ghraib 2.0 and could have a similarly radicalizing impact. So we'll break all of that down for you. Also, a major free speech controversy, a university president out at Penn. We will get into all of that. Really enraging me. Anyway, we'll give you all those details. More dire numbers for Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton jumping into the fray. We also want to break down for you a major abortion case unfolding in the state of Texas with the potential to roil politics there and across the country. I'm taking a look at the life of a poet who was killed by the Israelis over last week. And we also have an Israeli pollster who's going to join us to talk about what is going on in terms of domestic politics with regard to Bibi Netanyahu. But before we get to any of that, this is the last week to get our very, very special ugly Christmas sweater.
Go ahead and put it up there on the screen. I modeled a little bit for some people on Instagram. It is the very last week. We've only got a few left if you want to be able to get it and wear it during the Christmas season so you can proselytize. Such a great show. Also, we've got our yearly memberships, which remain on discount for the rest of the year. This is a way for you guys can help us out and build for the election season. Again, I say it every show, but it's shocking. A year from now, we will be at least finally done with the voting part of the 2024 election, which is wild and is nuts, but is one of those. You guys are really helping us build for that season, plan, remain nimble, and to be able to bring you all the best content that we possibly can in what is sure to be an absolutely wild and probably trying time. But we will be there with you throughout every step of the way. So breakingpoints.com to be able to take advantage of that.
All right, let's go ahead and get to the latest out of Israel and start with those fears of a broader war escalation possibilities on multiple fronts. Let's put this up on the screen. Huffington Post actually has been doing a good job with some of their reporting during this conflict, and they had a major piece breaking down some of the risks and with sources inside the administration raising alarm bells. What they say here is Gaza may soon become a bigger war. They've got the highlights. They say U.S. officials fear Israel wants weapons to fight in Lebanon. Israel will not share plans with the Biden administration or Congress. That reminds me of Ukraine there. Top officials discuss Iraq and Syria escalation. Aid organizations are ringing alarm bells more than they ever have. Let me give you a few of the details from within this piece that are really crucial to understanding where we are and what the risks are. They write, 1 week into the resumed Israeli military campaign in Gaza, U.S. officials and foreign policy experts are increasingly afraid that Israel's operation will fuel a broader conflict, drawing in Lebanon and expanding throughout the Middle East, potentially forcing American troops into the fight. One of the key pieces here that I found really noteworthy is you have Biden administration officials who are worried that the weapons that Israel is requesting from the United States right now, which, by the way, we've been, approving with no qualms whatsoever, they won't tell us what they actually want to use those weapons for. And that has raised grave fears from the White House and the Biden administration that those weapons are intended to be used in Lebanon against the Lebanese militia Hezbollah. They have a senior fellow at a Middle East Institute think tank quoted as saying this last week, the level of concern in D.C. about a potential war on the Israel-Lebanon front has gone up 3 or 4 notches. You also have, despite repeated calls for Israeli restraint, U.S. intelligence assesses the IDF are committed to, quote, business as usual with only limited concern about civilian casualties, according to a U.S. official. And their suspicions the renewed campaign is actually bloodier than the previous offensive in northern Gaza. And of course, the longer that this war continues, the more brutal and bloody the conduct of this war, the more possibility of escalation across the region from the Houthis, from Hezbollah, and from other actors who will feel compelled to stand up for Palestinians and, will obviously inflame tensions, not to mention, of course, the human carnage that all of that will create. So that's effectively where we are. But it seems like the biggest concerns right now, Saagar, are on the Lebanese front.
Yeah, well, a couple of different places because some multiple things could escalate all at the same time, and each could create like a polycrisis, if you will. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen for what people can see. The Houthis are now warning that they will target every single ship which is headed headed to Israel. Now, we've broken it down before, but the Red Sea remains one of the most strategic choke points in the entire world. And the Houthis have already shown at least a limited capability, at the very least, in disrupting global shipping, skyrocketing insurance rates, and targeting Israeli-flagged vessels, as well as shooting, at the very least, at UK-flagged and other places with US-guided missile destroyers, engaging drones and other things. So the war on the sea actually could have this most significant impact on the global economy, both from oil shipping to weapons production, food. The same thing that happened in the Black Sea after Ukraine is the same thing that we could be seeing here. And imagine two major global conflagrations in two of the most strategic choke points in the entire world for the sea. That's a massive job for the U.S. Navy, and one that would significantly heighten tensions. But you're also right. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. In terms of what we see from the Netanyahu administration, currently telling Biden behind the scenes, quote, Israel will act militarily against the Yemen's Houthis if the U.S. won't. Of course, Yemen and Israel are not all that close together, which would mean a significant increase not only in the air war, but likely the use of strategic missiles, medium-range missiles as well as missile defense systems. And this conflict, Krystal, I have no doubt. The Hezbollah one, I think would also be a conflagration, but I think the Yemen one is the single biggest threat to embroiling the United States in a broader war, simply because we have already shown a willingness to shoot down multiple missiles fired from Yemen with our guided missile destroyer. Our missile destroyers also have stepped up as the protection role in the Red Sea for the UK flagged ship vessels and all of that. So it's only a matter of time. And it only takes, and look, the Houthis, they may have better technology than Hezbollah and or the Hamas inside of Gaza, but this is still, rinky-dink at the end of the day. It only takes a single missile to go off course and to kill a U.S. sailor, and that's it. It's game on. And I don't think people have understood the strategic importance of what that will look like, on top of the Hezbollah situation, which threatens to also bring Syrian militias into the war. Remember, they can escalate against our troops there. Already, the ground force commanders in Iraq are sounding the alarm. They're like, we are sitting ducks here for all of the equipment and missile defense and all that stuff we have here. Piddly little rockets that come in and out. You can ask U.S. forces that served in Iraq. Eventually, one's going to hit somebody,
yeah.
And that takes things to another level. So we're not in a good place right now in the Middle East.
So that's the danger with regard to the Houthis. The other thing, they're effectively waging an economic war on Israel, because they're saying no ship that is headed for Israel is going to get through here. Specifically, they say if Gaza does not receive the food and medicine it needs, all ships in the Red Sea bound for Israeli ports, regardless of their nationality, will become a target for our armed forces. Now, that obviously creates risks and dangers for those ships in the region. But the other thing it does is it massively spikes the insurance rates for any Israeli ship, any Israeli flagged ship, or any ship that is heading to Israel. That is going to have a major economic impact globally, but in particular on Israel. So that is the leverage that they are planning to use in this conflict. And it's not just a threat at this point. They already obviously have taken clear action. And now you have Israel effectively saying, hey, U.S., you're not doing enough, which, listen, they can mind their own business. They can mind their own business on that front. But they're saying, if you don't take more action, we're going to get more involved. But that's not the only place. As I was saying before with regard to Lebanon, put this up on the screen, they are also directly threatening Hezbollah. This is from the Times of Israel. The headline here reads, National Security Advisor, this is the Israeli National Security Advisor, indicates war against Hezbollah likely once Hamas is defeated. So they are saying pretty clearly here that they don't really want the second front in the war right now, but they are very much testing the waters for a potential war against Hezbollah after they wrap up their war on Gaza. The quote here is, we can no longer accept Hezbollah's Radwan force sitting on the border. We can no longer accept Resolution 1701 not being implemented. That refers to a UN Security Council resolution from 2006 that barred any Hezbollah presence from within almost 30 kilometers of the border with Israel. Asked directly if there would be a war in the north, this national security advisor said, the situation in the north must be changed, and it will change. If Hezbollah agrees to change things via diplomacy, very good, but I don't believe it will. He goes on to say, therefore, when the day comes, Israel will have to act to ensure that residents of the north are no longer displaced in their land and to guarantee for them that the situation in the north has changed. He said Israel doesn't want to fight simultaneously on two fronts, indicated it would therefore tackle Hezbollah after Hamas is defeated. He said Israel has been, quote, making clear to the Americans we are not interested in war in the north, but that we will have no alternative but to impose a new reality if Hezbollah remains a threat. And that part about that UN resolution piece is being read effectively as like a trial balloon for justification, for some sort of like international justification. This is basically like the cover that they would use to justify to the U.S. why they have to then wage this war on Hezbollah.
Yeah, it reminds me of whenever we invaded Iraq because Saddam just wasn't complying with these UN resolutions, right? That'll totally be a proper justification. I actually read this as a way for Netanyahu to be able to wind down things in Gaza, but remain in the state of war for Israel so that he can stay in power as long as possible. The longer that more that we get away from October 7th, the less the questions of, hey, so what did you do on October 6th exactly? And why did all of these people just simply ignore these intelligence warnings? The more that we can make the situation about what's going on with external threats to the state of Israel, the better it is for Netanyahu. Every day that the war goes on is better for him. And for the Israelis, they're telegraphing they're going to need about 2 more months or so inside of Gaza. That's a long time for the people in Gaza. It's not a long time for Netanyahu. So what's the better way to do that? You escalate the war with Hezbollah. And then it's a lot like what happened with Iraq. By 2004, the national debate in this country had nothing to do with bin Laden and al-Qaeda and had everything to do with the security situation in a country which had nothing to do with 9/11 in the first place. It's a great distraction strategy, and it's what helped win Bush his second term in 2004. I'm the one who's going to keep us safe by continuing the war in Iraq and not in Afghanistan. So I think Netanyahu has, watched this entire thing play out. In many ways, he played an integral role in some of the events that were happening at that time. That's his best strategy for re-election.
Well, and this is something we can talk to Dalia, our Israeli pollster, about today. She was just interviewed in The New Yorker, and she was pointing out that almost everybody wants Netanyahu gone.
Right.
He has very little support left. The expectation is that as soon as the war is over, he's basically going to be forced down or have to resign. But if you ask people, hey, do you want him to go right now? It's only about a quarter of people who want him to go right now.
There you go.
The remainder say after the war is over, then we want you to go. But, the sense is like we just can't have this change and this chaos in the midst of this conflict. So we need to keep him there until the war is over. So yeah, he has every incentive in the world to drag this thing out as long as possible. And I mean, this is classic politics 101. We see it here all the time. We saw it, it came to mind. It was a very different situation. It's not analogous, but after what happened in East Palestine in Ohio, and there was all these calls for increased rail safety, and of course the rail companies didn't want that whatsoever, and so their whole strategy was, well, let's do a study, let's push it out, let's delay it, and let the heat die down. It's the same strategy that's being deployed here. He's hoping that people forget how upset they are, how disappointed they are, how much he failed, how much his doctrine, which he has bet on to keep his power, which was effectively to block any hope of a Palestinian statehood, to promise he could control the height of the flames, to promise he was Mr. Security and no one had to worry about anything and you could just maintain the status quo indefinitely. That was his whole doctrine. That completely failed on October 7th, not to mention the incredible intelligence and security failures that led them to fail in anticipating and in responding to those massacres and those atrocities that Hamas committed on October 7th. So he's hoping that over time, people will forget that and the rawness of that emotion will go away. And so, Saagar, I think you make a fantastic point about why they're saying, hey, after this war is over and after, whatever the U.S. decides we're actually done watching us commit these atrocities in Gaza and force us to stop there, this is the next front in the war that we're going to open up. And this UN resolution is the fig leaf of justification that we're going to use for continuing there.
Good luck. I mean, that's one of for Gaza, for all the fear of escalation, at least for now, it's been about 2 months or so that military operations have continued in the Strip, and we haven't seen mass mobilization, but it's still very young in the conflict, and the fear of escalation and the way things can go in Yemen and in Hezbollah. Also, don't forget about Syria. Don't forget about our roles there and all of our other, allies that we have across the world. This could significantly cause a massive conflagration. And it can happen very, very quickly, as I laid out. All it takes is a single U.S. sailor, one missile that goes the wrong way. Same with the Israelis. We've already seen misfires from the Israelis. If you'll remember, Krystal, that accidentally fired into Egypt. These are very, very confusing situations when things go hot like this. So we never know, and it's clearly in the direct interest of the Netanyahu government to continue this as long as possible. Hezbollah would be the perfect excuse. I think, though, that given the way things are going in Gaza, and we'll talk about this, for the military, that would be, look, Hezbollah, as we've always laid out, is significantly more militarily capable, as well as the Houthis in Yemen, and it would cause a hell of a lot more IDF casualties than even what they've seen in Gaza right now.
Yeah.
So the population would also, it would give them a reason, I think, to rebel, possibly. I'm not sure, what the political situation would remain, but you start seeing hundreds and hundreds of killed in action and tens of thousands of people who are wounded. It's a small country. You don't have that many young men who are, capable. They only got 300,000 in total strength.
And there's been a huge economic impact as well. And we'll probably cover this tomorrow, but Haaretz actually uncovered that the IDF was lying about their casualty figures by an astonishing amount. So we'll get into some more of that tomorrow and what we can glean of what the casualty numbers actually are. And they are much higher than what the Israelis have been presenting. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.